comes up with this over in Indian football. So you're bringing in a whole boatload of foreign players, nationalizing them, and then hoping to see what happens. That doesn't guarantee you a damn thing. What you end up getting are the rejects from other countries. Because, and I'm sorry to say it, if a player is from X, Y, or Z country, they're going to prefer playing for X, Y, or Z country, prefer playing for India. India ends up being kind of a last resort, I'm sorry to say. Because at the same time, what you're doing here is not only limiting your options, you're also cutting off a whole pipeline of players for the middle to long term. So, I mean, what you're doing here is basically football suicide from a developmental standpoint, which India is already struggling in to begin with. So what do you do? I mean, now don't get me wrong. Do some teams and some countries need that? Yes, they do. They might need one or two. But don't start thinking that you're going to have a starting 11 full of naturalized players, because then you have another thing coming. Because if you do, you better start questioning your quality. If these end up being the only options or the best options that you have available for your national team coach. I know Manolo Marquez said, well, this is what we have. And you're right, this is what you have. But part of the job, Manolo, is to be able to start looking for younger players to come in and compete. Something that you've failed to do up to now. You got to give younger, whether they work or they don't, you still got to give them the opportunity to do so. You can't just say, whoa, this is it. No, you can't. You got to go and do a little bit more. There needs to be better scouting of Indian players, which there are Indian players that would love to have a chance to play for the national team that live abroad. Give those the chance first. Then we'll start seeing. But then don't start stocking yourself full of those players and those players alone, because then your development elsewhere ends up really lacking. There's a lot of things that you have to start looking to in terms of Indian football that they need to start looking at better. Better scouting, better development of coaching. Now, I'm saying that because coaches are book smart in India, but they need the practice. They need the theoretical is great, but they need the practical experience. They need to go abroad. They need to find exchanges. You need to do the same thing for your players. Keep them competitive year-round. They can't play during the rainy season, send them elsewhere. They can't play in the first team, find a developmental league. You have to do that. You have to. This is not a dog and pony show where the one that ends up brushing there is the best, ends up looking good. You know, I mean, Igor Stimac said it the other day, this is a bunch of rich guys trying to show off to one another. Basically, me paraphrasing. And it's completely true. There needs to be a plan, but there needs to be a realistic plan too, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, in 10 years bullshit. In 10 years, nothing's going to happen. In 10 years, we're talking the same thing, because I've heard it already before. Mind you, there's a lot of similarities to what I hear in the United States as well. By 2010, we're going to be winning a World Cup. By 2020, we're going to be doing this. No, this is something that's generational. And if people want to be on board, they have to know. Everybody from the Ambanis all down the way down have to know that this is a 20, 30, maybe Ambani himself is not going to be able to see it, or his wife are going to be able to see the fruits of their investment in terms of Indian football. Maybe they won't. Because it's a long-term project. It's something that we might not even see. But it's something that has to be worked towards something. If it works in 10 years, great, God bless you. But you can't say that in 10 years it's going to work, because there's no measure. There's no way for you to say, I don't care who you are, that in 10 years it's going to work. You're not going to have, forget a world-class player, forget an intermediate, a good player for Asia. Okay? A good player for Asian standards. You're not going to have that in 10 years. It needs to be worked towards. And it needs to be worked towards by sending them out, shipping them out, giving players opportunities to go compete against the best, or go measure themselves against the best. There's a lot of things that Indian football needs to do before you even start considering all the things that you're considering. There needs to be a lot of foundation. And there's still a lot of, it's very patchy still. There's still a lot of things that need to be done before you even start considering a foreign-based player to come in. If not, you end up being Qatar a few years ago when it was full of Brazilian players and they really were going nowhere. Not that they're going anywhere right now, but they at least have certain players that are Qatari that have been able to do some positive in terms of the national team, in terms of winning back-to-back Asian Cups. You're not that yet. You still have a long ways to go if your ambitions are to be at a World Cup, which maybe you're about 20, 30 years away. I'm sorry to say. Even with how things are in Asia, you're still about 20, 30 years away. So stop thinking about bringing in foreigners and then, you're basically cutting your nose off at that point, despite your face. Because then you end up shutting out a great deal of players that might have potential, God knows, to be able to do great things in the future. But if you end up looking for the short term and the quick fix, which is what foreign players usually are in national teams, then you end up basically vanquishing a lot of work that was done and could have been done, or ends up being kicked down the road further, and in 5-10 years, that project begins, which ends up retarding the growth of Indian football. Keep that in mind, folks. It's not an easy road. It's not as easy as some are saying. And you need people to be speaking a little bit better in terms of what Indian football needs. Because there's some that are giving very unrealistic prospects in terms of what football is. There needs to be better and more realistic outlooks in terms of Indian football if you want Indian football to grow. Sorry to break it that way.